I wanted to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for your support over the last 5 years. We've grown into an enthusiastic international team of 15 people. We've loved producing battle map animations for you, and we love hearing how much you enjoy them. We do our absolute best to offer accurate and unbiased recreations of the most important battles and operations of the 20th and 21st century. I hope we've done a relatively good job of this. However, you may have seen among fellow history creators that views on long-form history content across the board are much reduced from even 12 months ago. The YouTube algorithm, which recommends our videos to people who might be interested in watching them, has been updated in a way which intentionally or otherwise suppresses recommendations of history content. With a team of people relying on the monetization that comes from views, and with fewer views with which to negotiate with sponsors, without which we can't produce videos full stop, this has become a major problem for us. Shorts, and YouTube's own ads, which we don't receive any revenue from, also now take up valuable space on the YouTube homepage that would ordinarily be used to recommend long-form content. YouTube's demonetization bots have now run completely out of control, with our second channel, The Intel Report, having been recently completely demonetized by mistake, only to be eventually reinstated after 2 appeals. We continue to be censored from mentioning certain words, people, events, and topics. You may have seen the farcical lengths that we had to go to in a recent video on the reasons for the Iraq War to not mention naughty words. With that in mind, this video is sponsored by our Patreon. We're uploading videos completely ad and sponsor free. We've launched a new Patreon exclusive Q&A series. I intend to also use Patreon as an exclusive release platform for any videos which get demonetized on YouTube. Absolutely no pressure at all, but if you'd like to support us to be able to continue making videos, it would be amazing. Please take a look at patreon.com/theoperationsroom. That's patreon.com/theoperationsroom. No problem at all if you aren't able to support us financially. We appreciate all your support since April 2019. It's the 20th of January 1991, the third day of the air war of Operation Desert Storm. At 3 AM, 8 Tornado GR1s of 15 Squadron of the RAF begin taking off from Muharraq Air Base in Bahrain. Just before the order was given to take off, the pilot of the last Tornado in the formation reported they could not select reheat for their engine, forcing them to abort the mission. The rest of the jets take off without them and climb to 12,000 feet en route to meet their Victor tankers. After the refueling, they will begin a 1,600-mile round trip, which will take them 4 hours to complete. The RAF pilots are completely unaware of the challenges they are about to face and will be pushed to their absolute limits in what will later be known as the mission from hell. Aircraft from a powerful coalition of nations have been pounding Iraq around the clock for the past 3 days. While the larger campaign has been incredibly successful at neutralizing the Iraqi Air Force and air defenses, the RAF's Tornado fleet has suffered heavier than expected casualties. 15 Squadron has had 2 aircraft shot down so far in the war, and altogether 4 Tornadoes have been lost, representing more than a third of all coalition aircraft losses. Squadron leader Nigel Risdale recalled thinking, "It's becoming like the Lancaster bombers in the Second World War. More aircraft, more friends lost every night." Whereas the US Air Force and Navy have averaged 1 aircraft downed every 750 sorties, the RAF is suffering 1 Tornado lost in every 80. There are several reasons for this. The Tornadoes have been assigned the role of hitting and disabling Iraqi airfields at low level, a dangerous task considering the Iraqi military's fearsome coverage of low-altitude AAA batteries and MANPADs defending key sites. Another contributing factor is that thus far in the campaign, the structure of the missions tends to be that American aircraft will carry out preliminary attacks to soften up Iraqi defences before the RAF Tornadoes reach the target at low level. Flight Commander Gordon Buckley believes these softening up raids are actually alerting the enemy to imminent attacks by the low-level GR1s, which then take the brunt of enemy fire. Tonight, 15 Squadron is trying a new tactic. Buckley suggests to Detachment Commander John Broadbent that 15 Squadron should conduct their next raid alone, without a preliminary strike by the US Air Force, in order to maximise surprise. Broadbent agrees that this is worth a try. Tonight's mission to Al Jarrar Air Base, southeast of Baghdad, will be conducted by 7 GR1s. Their objective is to put the airfield out of commission, so the 3 squadrons of Su-22 fighter bombers and a squadron of MiG-23 fighters cannot impede air operations. However, the failure of 1 Tornado to take part is only the beginning of the problems on this night. As the flight climbs to meet their tankers, the aircraft are tossed around and buffeted by intense turbulence. Powerful updrafts and downdrafts will make the task of refueling far more difficult than usual. As pilot Nick Hurd approaches the right wing of the Victor in front of him, he fights to keep the aircraft steady as he inches towards the refueling hose. Just as he's about to make contact with the hose, the flight enters clear weather and the GR-1 jolts forward and punctures the metal plates which hold the basket open. In peacetime, this would force an immediate return to base due to the risk of the basket breaking off and being ingested by the jet engine. But Hurd is determined to continue with the mission and gingerly backs away from the basket, and instead queues behind Squadron Leader Risdale on the tanker's left wing. Meanwhile, the rest of the aircraft are finding it nearly impossible to hook on to the Victors. Nigel Risdale later recalled, "It was like being on high-speed dodgems at the fairground, and then being constantly battered from all sides by the other cars. Some of the Tornadoes managed to hook on, only to fly through violent thunderclouds and lose the connection." Flight Commander Buckley reluctantly sends one aircraft after another back to base once they take too much time to refuel. As the formation approaches the Iraqi border, they are down to only 4 Tornadoes. When it's Buckley's turn to tank, he manages to latch onto the rear Victor as it passes through the dense clouds. Suddenly, the sky clears and the Victor nearly collides with the leading Victor. Buckley's tanker executes an emergency dive to avoid collision, while the GR-1 is caught in the lead tanker's jet wash. Buckley's Tornado plunges 6,000 feet before he is able to regain control. He recalled, "I gave the Victor pilot a piece of my mind and told him to hold it steady this time." The flight commander manages to successfully refuel, but he is now significantly behind the rest of the formation as they cross the Iraqi border. Instead of 8 Tornadoes launching a synchronized strike on the Al-Jarrar airbase, the attack will now be carried out by 3 GR-1s, while Buckley and his weapon system officer Paddy Teakle lag behind. Despite their situation, Buckley decides to carry on with the mission and to try to destroy Iraqi AAA positions. Meanwhile, the 3 leading Tornadoes approach their release point. So far, the formation has not been fired on by enemy defences. Speeding in at 200 feet above the desert floor and 550 miles per hour, pilot Nick Hurd is hopeful that the new strategy has caught the Iraqis by surprise. However, when the flight is 30 seconds from Al-Jarrar, the night sky turns into day as multicoloured explosions bracket the aircraft while tracers zip past them. The Tornadoes will once again be attacking into murderous enemy fire. Hurd recalled, "For some reason, they seemed to know where we were coming from this time. Worse, the AAA was now angled downwards instead of spraying straight up. The Iraqis have changed their anti-aircraft cannon trajectory, making it easier for them to track the GR-1s. For a brief moment, Hurd is reminded of 617 Squadron's Dambuster raid during the Second World War. To Hurd's left is Nigel Risdale's aircraft, which is narrowly avoiding enemy ground fire. Risdale's Tornado is carrying a JP-233 release pod, which must be deployed directly over the runway. This won't be an easy task. The air defences here are more sophisticated than at other Iraqi airfields. With 20 seconds to go, Risdale deselects the autopilot and dives the Tornado down to 180 feet. He releases his munitions, which parachute gently to the tarmac below. Nick Hurd now begins his own run. Despite the aerial barrage around him, he also releases the munitions directly over the runway. 60 bomblets from the 2 aircraft slowly parachute down to Earth, ready to explode upon contact with the ground. A further 430 anti-personnel mines also cover the area to complicate Iraqi repair efforts. The 2 Tornado pilots jettison their empty external fuel tanks and turn for home, thankful to have survived the ordeal. Meanwhile, Gordon Buckley and Paddy Teakle are approaching for their attack run. Ahead, they can see the tracers lighting up the night sky. Suddenly, the radar warning receiver announces that a fire control radar is tracking them. Buckley informs Teakle, turning in 3 minutes to avoid the SAM site, before adding, "How's the fuel? We're running on minimum fuel. We'll have to punch the underwing tanks off." With only the bare minimum to complete the mission and get back to the tanker, Buckley will need to jettison the external fuel tanks to make the Tornado lighter after their attack run. Unlike Hurd and Risdale, Buckley's Tornado is carrying 1,000-pound bombs, which are dropped by what is known as loft bombing, pulling up into a climb and releasing, thereby lofting or throwing the bombs towards the target in a ballistic arc. Up ahead, the first JP-233 munitions detonate, cratering the runway at Al-Jarrar. The Iraqi anti-aircraft fire intensifies, as if the RAF strike aircraft have kicked a hornet's nest. I was expecting to see a hole in the AAA as the guns were destroyed, but there was nothing, no change at all, recalled Buckley. I now realised that we were going to have to attack into the same maelstrom. Teagle tells the pilot to increase speed, and the Tornado goes to afterburner. They are now approaching the target. The GR-1 is travelling at close to 700 miles per hour, as the Iraqi anti-aircraft fire zeroes in on the aircraft, which is flying at just 180 feet above the ground. Eager to escape the hurricane of tracers, Buckley says, "Looks like we're here, mate," to which Teagle angrily responds, "No, we're not there yet, keep going. I know the AAA looks close, you're alright." The aircraft somehow does not take a hit despite the vicious anti-aircraft fire, but both men feel their luck won't hold much longer. Finally, Teagle announces, "Pulling in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, pull." The aircraft climbs into the night sky as Buckley releases the munitions. Teagle announces, "Bombs all gone," as the 8 1,000-pound bombs arc towards the Iraqi positions. Buckley begins his recovery and jettisons the external fuel tanks, pulling hard to bank away from the enemy fire. Buckley pulls the aircraft inverted on its left wing and descends, but suffers from spatial disorientation in the empty night desert. In a matter of seconds, the GR-1 falls from 3,000 feet to under 500. As audio warnings fill the aircraft, Teagle shouts, "Start levelling off, mate, we've got 300 feet to go." Finally regaining his bearings, Buckley levels out less than 100 feet from the ground. 8 massive bomb blasts smash the targets on the ground and shake the aircraft. Teagle breathes a sigh of relief. "That was close," to which his pilot responds, "I don't ever want to do that again." The Tornado begins egressing south back towards the safety of Bahrain, while the enemy AAA continues to lance into the night sky. By dawn, all 4 strike aircraft will be back on the ground at Muharraq Air Base. When the pilots stagger into the operations room for a debrief, one exclaims, "I'll tell you what, I don't have many more of those inside me." Buckley later remembered, "I can still see my friend's haunted expressions." Nearly everything went wrong during the RAF's Mission from Hell on the 20th of January 1991. 15 Squadron's Commander John Broadbent is shaken by his pilot's experiences and recommends further changes in his mission report. The next attacks will be launched with more Wild Weasel support, and the RAF will continually tweak their tactics throughout the war. Nigel Ridsdale will later recall, "For me personally, that third mission was an emotional watershed. The sortie from hell, where everything that could go wrong had gone wrong. Nonetheless, Kuwait has yet to be liberated, and the Tornadoes of the RAF will be called on again to carry out their dangerous work." Thanks again to our amazing patrons, without which we wouldn't be able to produce videos like this. Welcome to all our new patrons this month, and a special thanks to our Patron of the Week, Phil McCaffrey. Each week we choose our favourite Patreon comments to shout out. This week, Sumo94 says, "These low-level attacks by the RAF to disable Iraqi airfields were dangerous but necessary. One can only imagine the dangers of their primary purpose, hitting Soviet airfields in Eastern Europe." If you'd like to support us, please join our Patreon at patreon.com/The Operations Room and get access to exclusive benefits such as early access to videos ad and sponsor free. We would love to have you as part of our community and really appreciate your support.